Welcome. I'm Dr. Dean.
And I'm Venzel.
So we're here today to talk about another one of our topics that we try to avoid talking to people about. But we also know it's an important message. So the message is about the core. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of core messaging out there. Mm-hmm. What is the core? What does it do? Why do we have it? How can core knowledge be integrated with activities and performance and sports, right? Mm-hmm. So we recorded this once and our heads were chopped off, and we're re-recording this. But it's good because we were a little too lively, I think. Yeah. Which is all right. We want to include everyone in the conversation. So the idea is that we sort of help our audience understand part of our journey, and the journey brought us to Correct System.
Exactly.
Right, and the Correct System is about understanding the root of, let's say, power or performance, not necessarily that more core activation amplifies the way you perform, but it optimizes. It becomes, let's say, even like critically specific.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we talk about the core in the trainings, we usually have all of the audience. We say, okay, hey. So first question is, what is the core? Where is it? What does it do?
Yeah.
And basically, my experience is there is no answer. Or they'll say, oh, it's somewhere here. It's sort of used, for heavy lifting, or it's definitely used in performance or activities. Yeah. But when you kind of get down to the definition of it, like specifically, what do you hear?
Well, I hear, you usually hear the core as, in terms of the core, you hear rectus abdominis. So they think it's just the rectus, and they don't even think about the obliques. They don't think about the internal, external obliques. The serratus. They don't think about muscle groups that are more distal from your trunk, like your shoulder. Your shoulder can be a part of your core as well for stability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's just try to pick it apart really quickly for you so that you can understand what we're getting at, why we're here today. So the idea is that the core, yes, it's somewhere in this area. And the idea, if you think about core, you can even think about like a balloon or a ball. And if you take that balloon or a ball and you kind of press it into the center of your body, we could say that balloon or that ball becomes like, the intestines, basically. It's the small and large intestines, right? And then the top of the ball is the diaphragmatic sort of covering, right? So we can say that's the top of the balloon. Yeah. And the pelvic floor is sort of the floor. Bottom floor covering, right? And then the obliques are sort of the side covering, right? And then the back, we say, it's not really a covering, is like the multifidus. And then there's this kind of story, you already brought it up, about rectus. Well, rectus is basically just, a trunk flexor. It really doesn't contribute functionally to the core. So if you think about the core as a ball, like a fluid ball, right? If you can compress side to side, top to bottom, front to back, you're going to increase the density of that fluid ball, and that becomes a stabilizing feature. Yeah. Right? So in and of itself, the core doesn't do outward power. It creates a solid foundation, more solid of a foundation. Okay? So we could say that the core, by definition, is the myofascial integrative center of the body.
Exactly.
It is the place in the body where forces are transmitted across the top to the bottom of the body, right? Front to back, left to right, right to left, and anterior to posterior, posterior to anterior. So all these vectors are kind of, right? But the problem is you can't transmit forces of power through the intestines, right? Yeah. But the whole middle of the body, besides the spine, is essentially just digestive organs.
Yeah.
So those forces have to be transmitted around the outside of that balloon. So the core really, if you want to understand it truly what it really is, the core in of itself doesn't produce outward power, it doesn't produce strength, but what it does is creates a foundation from which right, we call that the inner unit really, right? And then there's the outer unit. So the inner unit, that core stability, is directly related to primarily respiration, right? Because there's that big piece of the diaphragm, the respiratory diaphragm, that's on the crown, or called the roof, right? And then the obliques. And so those are also attached to the ribs.
Yeah.
So breathing in and breathing out, you can see you can
Inspire
really
and
get
expire,
a compressive force on the inside. Now, once that inner unit is really compressed, then we add the outer unit, which is to your point, which is the shoulder complex, hip complex.
Yeah.
And those are those myofascial slings.
Yep.
Right? So tell me about slings.
So dealing with slings, it's connective tissue that runs across multiple joints and multiple muscle groups. And being able to address that motor pattern through the sling is what CoreX is all about. And that's why I kind of fell in love with CoreX.